There was once an era in the Need for Speed franchise where EA handed the keys to multiple developers, pushing out a new Need for Speed game almost every year. Each developer was experimenting and trying something new for the franchise. Most stuck, but not all. Need for Speed went from a street racing franchise between linear and open world to a simcade racer and then an innovative cinematic experience. And that innovative cinematic experience was none other than Need for Speed The Run, the game that shut down Black Box Games. Nearly 10 years later, and this game has become legendary upon Need spans of the old and new. It's challenging, it's cinematically intense, it's different compared to previous games. Remember, this was part of the experimental era, and personally, The Run is the best game of that era, and here's why. The Run has a pretty straightforward narrative and formula. Beat other racers through a cross-country event. But it's the action-packed set pieces and gameplay that makes it really feel like you're running for your life. Set pieces put you against racing avalanches, escaping mobs while avoiding gunfire, avoiding getting crushed by trains, and QTEs that have you running from the mob, the cops, and escaping a car crusher. I have to admit, some of these QTE fails can be brutal. Missing a jump can send your protagonist bashing into the ground from a height. But when it comes to races, it's either first place or you lose, creating these very intense and sometimes punishing races, especially with the one-on-ones. But what made it intense was this thing that you see underneath the minimap. Yep, you guessed it, that's how many tries or lives you have left until you have to restart the entire race. Crashes, busts, and running out of time result in the player being able to restart at a checkpoint. But like I mentioned, lose all your tries, you start over. It keeps you on your toes and makes you more careful. Plus, the AI can really put up a fight sometimes, drafting you and grabbing the insider corners with as little effort as possible. Although there are times where there's some obvious rubber banding, and that's without the AI drafting or using nitrous. It does get frustrating with certain race modes, especially near the end. Different types of races or modes in the campaign consist of time trials, elimination races, and sprint races. Time trial is self-explanatory. go through checkpoints to gain more time, reach the finish line before the time runs out. Elimination, or battles, have you overtaking opponents and holding the lead until the time runs out, and you're on to the next opponent. Sprint races are just your standard point-to-point races. Simple. Outside races, there are also scripted events that see you escaping mobs as well as QTEs, like mentioned before. Escaping mobs usually require you to avoid gunfire from mob vehicles and sometimes a freaking chopper. One thing I liked about this is that even in certain races, the mob will eventually intercept, meaning that not only do you have to beat all the races, but you also need to stay alive. Adds a little bit of intensity and variety, which is very welcome in the series. From beginning to end, the run is a roller coaster of an action racing game. You race in cities, snowy highways, mountains, industrial areas, and alongside open fields and farms. It really makes you feel like you're on an American road trip. You're racing in San Fran, Las Vegas to New York. At the beginning of the game, you're racing past trains, and by the end, you're avoiding trains. Police in Need for Speed games haven't always been the best, and unfortunately that is the same case here. While they do sometimes treat you like a punching bag, it's not often where police are much of an issue. QTEs, although very much hated in gaming culture, see you running outside of your car for the first time in the series' history. Honestly, I wish these QTEs were a little bit harder, but I see that would have been a large complaint about the game. So what we have is more or less decent. I like what the campaign has to offer in terms of variety in these different levels. Although it doesn't sound like much compared to open world Need for Speed games, they're sometimes done in different ways.
Word is you made a wrong turn, Jack.
No one ever got ahead sitting on their hands, now did they, Sam?
Nobody from our block, at least. You know I can help you straighten that out.
And my end?
What you do best. What you do better than anyone. Right now. Yes or no?
You knew the answer before I even walked to the door.
The race is from San Fran to New York. The best racers ever assembled. You win, I will handle your problem and give you a 10% cut.
Whoa. 10%?
The purse is 25 million. Do the math.
After you.
This will keep us in touch. Now we have to get you a car.
Cars. I got covered.
But then we get into the plot, or the story, which is honestly the worst part of the run. We only learn about character backstories via loading screens, which feels pretty lazy and cheap. Characters don't have much, well, character. In fact, a majority of the characters you face off with don't even have any interaction with you. You just race and beat them, end of story. But at least we get to see the playable characters facing cutscenes for the first time in the series' history. Meet Jack Rook, someone who is deeply in debt with the mob and is hoping to pay them back after winning the run. Then meet Sam, Jack's sidekick, who has some connections with some of the racers competing in the run and is the key to Jack's survival. And the rest is unknown and never to be expanded upon. No biggie, I guess.
No biggie, no biggie. Son, but you know niggas call me AKA Roddy Escobar.
Need for Speed has never been known for their stories really, but there honestly isn't much effort when it comes to the run's narrative. Almost Wanted 05 and Carbon had these cheesy cutscenes with cringy writing, the characters were memorable and even iconic, but honestly who even cares about the story? It's the set pieces and the unique races that pretty much make the run's campaign fun and different from the previous games. And trust me, it's an engaging and sometimes exhausting rollercoaster of a racing game campaign. If you've watched the Need for Speed movie, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, clearly not IGN's, you'll find quite a lot of similarities to the run, which was released around 3 years prior. Although the movie isn't as Michael Bay inspired than the run. Besides the story and characters of the run being pretty weak, it's still a memorable and very enjoyable campaign.
In pursuit of a vehicle matching the description of that Code 6 party, stand by.
The Challenge series is pretty much an expansion to the campaign, excluding the story, cutscenes and QTEs. Some challenges have certain themes that pay homage to previous Need for Speed games, such as Carbon, Most Wanted and Underground 2, and some are just replacing certain campaign events with slight twists, changes or additions. Challenges have you trying to win and complete events in a certain time for either bronze, silver, gold or even platinum medal. I like these challenges because of how they change the way your favorite campaign events are played. I spent quite a bit of my time playing San Fran races and Las Vegas events, not only because they are my favorite locations in the game, but also because you get to replay them in more challenging situations, as well as different objectives. Although very linear in formula, it freshens up older stages into something more challenging and different. Challenges are also where you really get to flex your muscles on the leaderboards. Now while I don't really compete against the leaderboard, it is still pretty satisfying getting the fastest time and a new medal. But I do have to admit, along with challenges, there should have been some type of free play mode, like where you can create your own races with your own rules and settings, almost like in Drive Club and many track races, just to keep things fresh a little bit, instead of just replaying levels made by the developers. I unfortunately can't speak on the game's multiplayer, but from what I've seen, it looks pretty damn fun and intense. It looks similar to the Crew 2's PvP street races. It seems to have a drop-in, drop-out method of play, which to me doesn't really seem to work well since the run takes place in linear races, because the first thing you know, you join, and the next thing you know, somebody has already won the race. Other than that, the run's multiplayer does look like genuine fun. Other than that, I have nothing else to say about it. I think Need for Speed The Run has the best handling model in the series, period. It's still pure arcade racing fun, but its authenticity of how a car drives and feels is similar to Killzone's movement and motion design. Cars feel heavy and weighty. Each sharp turn requires precise braking, and drifting isn't all that easy to pull off. And the camera is the cherry on top. The Run's action cam captures sense of speed very well for its time. Of course they've improved since, but the way the camera sways when pulling off sharp turns is awesome. And I feel like the camera also adds to the way the handling model feels. The camera is usually pretty close to the car, giving you an idea that the car is a little weighty and slow, almost like the car has been overdosing on donuts. Till this day, no Need for Speed game from 2011 onwards has come close to having as good of a handling model as the Run. The Run feels authentic, and at times it feels like a simcade racer. It's like I'm playing a Michael Bay version of Drive Club or the Grid series. When racing, the Run is one of the only racing games where slipstreaming or drafting is a very useful tool. Alongside your speedometer on the opposite side of your nitro meter, you have your slipstream meter. Trust me when I say NPCs use this to their absolute advantage. They abuse this feature. Especially at the end of a race, opponents will literally feed off your speed by drafting you, so the best thing to do is to shake them, or just boost miles away from them. But slipstreaming can be such a lifesaver when the meter is full and you'll be slingshot forward. Combine this with NOS and you'll really be feeling the need for speed. One thing that's a little bit of a disappointment though is the lack of in-depth car customization. It was similar to Hot Pursuit 2010, where you couldn't upgrade a car's performance, customize certain parts of a car, but only change the color of the car. But unlike Hot Pursuit 2010, the Run actually allows you to change the look of your chosen car quite a bit with body kits. Body kits would change the color of the car as well as additional car parts. Although not much, body kits made your car look 10 times better. In fact, it sometimes made your car look like a monster. During races, there will sometimes be a gas station that you can drive through. Driving through one will allow you to change cars mid-race with the race being paused. This can be useful if you regret the car you chose before the race, but I'm not gonna lie, this is basically a way to cheat your way through if you have a monster of a car already in your garage. It's a neat touch, but essentially can make some races easier if you play your cards right. When it comes to the presentation of the Run, car models and character models look really good. You can see Black Box really put the Fastbite engine to good use. I'm not really a graphics guy, but graphically this is one of the better looking Need for Speed games. Facial animations, although not perfect, still hold up about 10 years later. Now, I usually don't talk about glitches, but one issue I came across a lot was my minimap just bugging out or straight up not showing. I don't know if there's anything wrong with my copy, but this problem was pretty frequent. When restarting a race or respawning from a checkpoint, it does eventually get fixed, but the problem comes back sooner or later. This could just be for me though. Another minor complaint I have with the game is how long some load times are. Especially on console, where you'll be staring at the loading screen for almost 2 minutes at a time. Sometimes just wanting to restart a race will take up to 3 to 4 minutes. On PC though, which is what I was playing on for this video, it's a lot faster. But there are still times where load times are a little lengthy. In terms of the car roster, the Run has a pretty good one. But some of the really good ones are hidden behind DLC packs. I mean, you can get some touring cars in the DLCs. For example, a Shift 2 themed BMW, obviously straight from Shift 2. Along with the themed challenges referencing previous Need for Speed games, you can get iconic Need for Speed cars with their iconic liveries, like the Nissan 350Z from Underground 2, which looks curvier than before, if that makes sense. And of course, we have the iconic BMW M3 GTR E46 from Most Wanted. Oh well, I assume they couldn't get the license for the OG M3, although racing a silenced Razor with a big boy in a Most Wanted livery feels kind of underwhelming, but it's understandable. Then you get Darius's sexy Audi R8 in black, red and white from Carbon, as well as Cross's Carbon themed Corvette. These things are an absolute pleasure to drive. They're fast, they're tight around corners, and they look freaking amazing during night races. I mostly used Darius's R8 to finish the campaign because it's just so fun to drive and look at. I'm not kidding. With these themed challenges, you can see that Black Box really tried hard to appeal to their hardcore fans. There was at least some effort put into these. And also, these cars sound amazing. The way the engine lowers in volume for a moment just for you to blast through in top speed with the engine crying for its life. The sound design in this game is superb. Engine roars sound amazing, although I do have to admit that squeals can be a little too frequent, but the overall sound of this game is just, it's mind-blowing for its time.
He's taking himself out. I'm on him.
last part of the presentation I want to talk about is the score and soundtrack. Need for Speed The Run has an intense, sometimes rock-influenced and hard-pumping score. Being close to the finish on the final race, the score really has your heart beating along with the race itself. Music that plays in the mountains fits so well. Victory music feels rewarding and easy on the ears. Even the losing music sounds epic. Hearing the guitar play those raging strings. It's epic, cinematic, and it's memorable. The soundtrack, on the other hand, really fits this American cross-country theme, as you can hear blues, rock, and country music blasting as you speed down mountains, highways, and mines. If you've played The Crew, you'll notice that a lot of the best songs in the run were put into The Crew. And to be honest, at times The Crew does sometimes feel like The Run. But the overall presentation of The Run is impressive and makes for a really great action racing game. Need for Speed The Run, one of the most underrated Need for Speed games of that experimental era, is probably one of the best from that era, competing against Shift, Undercover, Nitro, etc. Alongside The Run, Black Box were also working on the iconic Skate 3, which did better in terms of reception, sales, and pretty much everything else. The Run was one of the most innovative games in the series by far. It was cinematic, and the set pieces were very blockbuster-esque. It's just a shame the game didn't get the love it deserves until after Black Box was shut down. It was around 2017 or 2018 when the game started getting praise after recent lackluster Need for Speed games. It was different from Carbon, Undercover, Most Wanted, Shifts, and all that. It's just a shame people ignored that fact. If you're convinced and are able to get the run in some way, I highly recommend you do. I really do. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to get it ASAP if you're purchasing it on digital stores. EA has announced last month or so that all the Need for Speed games are being delisted and unsupported. So if you can get it, get it. Racing games are pretty cheap nowadays, especially old ones and hidden gems. So this was me basically analyzing the run, and I've changed some of your minds on the game. But I assume most of you watching already know how good this game is.
I fixed your problem. They won't be bothering you again.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Your cut's in a deposit box in Grand Central Station. It's more than enough cash for you to go and kick back for a while.
Kick back?
Yeah, you know. Relax, take it easy, put your feet up. Or maybe, if you're interested in doubling down, I just got a call.